Nobody prepares you for the exact moment normal life breaks into pieces. 1 minute, you're arguing over something as small as who forgot to lock the gate, and the next minute, your entire world is racing down a hospital corridor, fighting to breathe. That was how it started. Chinedu still remembered the sound of the plate hitting the floor. It was a sharp, sudden crash that echoed through the house, followed by silence, an unnatural, suffocating silence that made his heart skip. He had been sitting in the living room, half watching a football match, half scrolling through his phone when it happened. Please, great viewers, support this channel now by subscribing to this channel now, as we continue. Emeka, he called out, frowning. No answer. He stood up slowly at first, annoyed more than concerned. His younger brother had always been clumsy, always dropping things, always turning simple tasks into noise. But something about that silence felt wrong. Too still. Too heavy. Emeka, did you break? He stopped mid-sentence as he stepped into the dining area. Emeka was on the floor. Not moving. The plate lay shattered beside him, food scattered across the tiles. One of his hands twitched slightly, but his eyes were half closed, unfocused, like he was trying to wake up from a dream he couldn't escape. Emeka! Chinedu rushed forward, dropping to his knees. His heart began pounding violently as he shook him. Emeka! Can you hear me? What's wrong with you? Emeka's lips parted weakly. I don't. And then his body went limp. Everything after that happened too fast and yet too slow at the same time. Chinedu didn't remember grabbing his phone, but suddenly it was in his hand. He didn't remember dialing, but he was shouting into it. Mama! Come home now. It's Emeka, something is wrong. On the other end, Mama Ngozi's voice immediately rose in panic. What happened? Chinedu, what happened to your brother? I don't know. He just collapsed. He's not responding. Within minutes, the house that had been quiet was thrown into chaos. Neighbors gathered. Someone brought water. Someone else suggested prayers. Another person insisted they shouldn't waste time. Take him to the hospital now, a woman shouted. Chinedu didn't argue. He carried Emeka himself. His brother felt heavier than usual, his body completely slack, his head falling awkwardly against Chinedu's shoulder. Every second felt like it was slipping away, like time itself was mocking him. Stay with me, Chinedu muttered under his breath as he hurried toward the car. Don't you dare do this to me, Emeka. Not like this. Mama Ngozi arrived just as they were about to leave. She didn't even close the gate behind her properly. Her wrapper was tied hastily, her hair slightly undone, her face already wet with tears. Jesus! What happened to my son? He collapsed, Mama. We need to go now. She climbed into the back seat, pulling Emeka's head onto her lap. Her hands trembled as she touched his face. Emeka, open your eyes, she pleaded. My son, don't do this to me. Talk to me. But Emeka didn't respond. The drive to the hospital felt endless. Please, great viewers, support this channel now by subscribing to this channel now, as we continue. Chinedu sped through traffic, ignoring the horns, ignoring the curses from other drivers. His grip on the steering wheel was tight, his knuckles pale. Hold him well, Mama, he said quickly. Make sure he's breathing. I'm here, my son, Mama Ngozi whispered, her voice shaking as she stroked Emeka's hair. You will be fine. Nothing will happen to you. God will not allow it. She began to pray out loud, her words tumbling over each other. Father Lord, please save my son. Blood of Jesus, cover him. This is not how his life will end. I reject it. Mama, Chinedu interrupted softly, trying to stay focused on the road. His breathing, right? There was a pause. Then she nodded quickly, though her voice betrayed her fear. Yes, he is. But something about the way she said it didn't reassure him. When they finally reached the private hospital, everything became a blur of white coats and urgency. Nurses rushed out with a stretcher. "What happened?" one of them asked. "He collapsed," Chinedu replied quickly. "He was just standing and then he fell." They didn't waste time. Emeka was wheeled inside immediately. "Sir, you'll need to wait here," another nurse told Chinedu firmly as he tried to follow. "No, I'm coming with him," Chinedu insisted. "You can't go in right now. Let us do our job." Mama Ngozi grabbed his arm gently. "Let them help him," she said, though her own eyes were filled with panic. Reluctantly, Chinedu stopped. The doors closed. And just like that, they were left outside, waiting. Waiting was the hardest part. The hospital waiting area felt cold, even though the fans were barely working. The ticking clock on the wall seemed louder than usual, each second dragging painfully. Mama Ngozi sat with her hands clasped tightly, her lips moving silently in prayer. Chinedu couldn't sit. He paced. Back and forth. Over and over again. His mind replayed the moment over and over, Emeka falling, his weak voice, the way his body had gone limp. It didn't make sense. Emeka wasn't sick. At least, not that he knew of. Did he complain about anything? Mama Ngozi suddenly asked. Chinedu stopped pacing. He thought for a moment. "No, not really," he said slowly. "He's been normal." But even as he said it, something tugged at his memory. Normal? Was he really normal? Emeka had been different lately. Quieter. Distracted. Always on his phone. Smiling at messages he never explained. And sometimes disappearing without saying where he was going. Chinedu frowned slightly. At the time, he hadn't thought much of it. Emeka was an adult. He had his own life. But now, it felt like there were pieces missing. "Are you sure?" Mama Ngozi pressed, her eyes searching his face. Chinedu hesitated. "I mean, he's been a bit distant," he admitted. "But nothing serious. I didn't think." The door suddenly opened. Both of them stood up immediately. A doctor walked out, removing his gloves. "How is he?" Mama Ngozi rushed forward. The doctor gave a small, reassuring smile. "He's stable." The tension in the air shifted instantly. "Thank God," she whispered, her knees almost giving way. "What happened to him?" Chinedu asked quickly. The doctor adjusted his glasses. "We're still running some tests, but for now, there's no immediate danger." "No immediate danger." Chinedu repeated. "So what caused him to collapse?" "We'll need to observe him," the doctor replied calmly. "Sometimes these things can happen due to stress, fatigue, or underlying conditions we haven't identified yet." Chinedu didn't look convinced. "Can we see him?" The doctor nodded. Briefly. They followed him down the corridor. The smell of antiseptic filled the air. Machines beeped softly from different rooms. Everything felt too quiet, too controlled, too far removed from the chaos they had just experienced. When they entered the room, Emeka was lying on the bed, eyes closed, and 4 drip attached to his arm. He looked peaceful. Too peaceful. "Mummy," he said weakly, his eyes slowly opening. Mama Ngozi rushed to his side immediately. "My son. You scared me." "I'm fine," Emeka murmured, forcing a faint smile. Chinedu stepped closer, studying him carefully. "You don't look fine," he said bluntly. Emeka chuckled softly. "I'm still alive, aren't I?" But something about his tone felt off. Too light. Too casual. Like this wasn't a big deal. Like collapsing in the middle of the house was just nothing. "What happened?" Chinedu asked, narrowing his eyes. Emeka looked away briefly. I don't know, he said. I just felt dizzy. That's it. He nodded. Chinedu exchanged a quick glance with Mama Ngozi. Neither of them said it out loud, but they were both thinking the same thing. Something wasn't adding up. As they stood there, trying to process everything, a nurse entered the room quietly. Good evening, she said softly. Chinedu turned slightly. For a brief moment, his eye shifted to Emeka. And what he saw made his chest tighten. Emeka was looking at the nurse. Not like a patient looking at a caregiver, but like someone who already knew her. And the expression on his face. It wasn't pain. It wasn't confusion. It was something else entirely. Something Chinedu couldn't quite explain. But he knew one thing instantly. This wasn't just about a sudden collapse. There was something deeper going on. And whatever it was, it had already begun long before Emeka hit the floor. By the next morning, the tension that had swallowed the previous day seemed to loosen its grip, at least on the surface. Sunlight filtered through the hospital blinds, casting soft lines across Emeka's bed. The machines beside him beeped steadily, calm and controlled, nothing like the chaos of the night before. To anyone walking past, it would look like a normal recovery scene. But Chinedu wasn't convinced. He stood by the window, arms folded, watching his younger brother carefully. Emeka looked fine. Too fine. In fact, he looked better than someone who had collapsed without warning just hours ago. Mama, I told you, I'm okay, Emeka said with a small smile as Mama Ngozi adjusted his bedsheet for the third time in 5 minutes. You keep saying that, she replied, her voice firm but gentle, but you scared us. Do you know what I went through last night? I couldn't even sleep. I'm sorry, Mama, he said softly. Chinedu turned from the window. Sorry doesn't explain anything, he said bluntly. Emeka sighed. Ah, Chinedu, not this morning, please. No, we're doing this now, Chinedu insisted, stepping closer. You collapsed in the middle of the house. No warning. No explanation. And now you're lying here like nothing happened. I said I felt dizzy. And people just collapse from feeling dizzy. Chinedu shot back. Mama Ngozi raised her hand slightly. Chinedu. But he shook his head. No, Mama. Something is not right. Emeka looked away, clearly irritated now. So what do you want me to say? That I planned it. That's exactly what I'm trying to understand, Chinedu replied quietly. The room fell silent. For a moment, the only sound was the steady beep of the monitor. Then Emeka chuckled softly, shaking his head. You're overthinking things, bro. Not everything is a conspiracy. Chinedu didn't smile. He studied Emeka's face carefully, the ease in his expression, the lack of concern, the almost relaxed energy. It didn't match what had happened. Not even close. Fine, Chinedu said after a pause. Let's assume it was nothing serious. It was nothing serious, Emeka corrected quickly. Then why do you look happier today than you've been in weeks? That question landed differently. Emeka hesitated for just a second. And Chinedu noticed. See, he pressed. Even you don't know how to answer that. I'm just happy I'm alive, Emeka replied, forcing a light tone. But it didn't feel genuine. Mama Ngozi exhaled slowly. Both of you should calm down. This is not the time to start fighting. I'm not fighting, Mama, Chinedu said. I'm trying to understand what's going on. There's nothing going on, Emeka insisted. Before Chinedu could respond, there was a soft knock on the door. All three of them turned. And then she walked in. Good morning, the nurse said calmly. Her voice was soft, controlled, almost soothing. She wore her uniform neatly, her movements graceful as she stepped into the room. Her name tag read, Amora. Good morning, Mamangozi replied politely. But Chinedu didn't respond. Because he was watching Emeka. And Emeka had completely changed. It was subtle. Too subtle for someone who wasn't paying attention. But Chinedu was. The slight lift in Emeka's posture. The way his eyes lit up instantly. The faint smile that appeared without effort. It wasn't the reaction of a patient seeing a nurse. It was something else. Something familiar. Something personal. "How are you feeling today?" Nurse Amora asked as she approached the bed. "I'm much better," Emeka replied quickly, his tone noticeably brighter than before. "I can see that," she said with a small smile. She began checking his fore, adjusting it carefully. Her movements were professional. Precise. But there was something else in the air. Something unspoken. Chinedu's eyes moved between them, his suspicion growing quietly. "Any dizziness?" she asked. "Not anymore," Emeka said. "Good." There was a brief pause. Then she added, "You need to keep resting, though. Don't rush things." "I'll try," he replied. But the way he said it sounded more like a promise to her than a medical response. Chinedu stepped forward slightly. "Excuse me," he said, his tone polite but firm. "How long will he need to stay here?" Nurse Amora turned to him calmly. "That depends on how he responds to observation." "He looks fine to me," Chinedu said. "That's a good sign," she replied. "But we still need to be careful." Chinedu nodded slowly. But his eyes didn't leave her. And when she turned back to Emeka, he noticed something else. The way her expression softened, just slightly. It was quick. Almost invisible. But it was there. And Emeka saw it too. After she finished checking the drip, she stepped back. "I'll be around if you need anything," she said. "Thank you," Mamangozi replied. But Emeka didn't say anything. He just watched her. And she gave him one last look before leaving the room. The door closed gently behind her. Silence followed. Then Chinedu spoke. "What was that?" Emeka blinked. "What was what?" "Don't play with me," Chinedu said sharply. "That nurse. What about her?" "The way you were looking at her." Emeka scoffed lightly. "You're imagining things." "I'm not blind, Emeka." Mamangozi looked between them. "Chinedu." "No, Mama, please," he said. "Tell me you didn't notice." She hesitated. That hesitation was enough. "Notice what?" she asked cautiously. "The way he changed when she walked in," Chinedu replied. "It's like he forgot he was even sick." "That's not true," Emeka said quickly. "Really?" Chinedu raised an eyebrow. "Because you looked more excited than when the doctor said you were stable." Emeka exhaled in frustration. "You're reading too much into this." "Am I?" "Yes." Chinedu stared at him for a moment. Then he stepped back slightly, nodding slowly. "Okay," he said. "Let's leave it." But his tone made it clear. He wasn't convinced. Hours passed. Mamangozi eventually stepped out to get food. Chinedu stayed. He sat quietly, pretending to scroll through his phone, but his attention was still on Emeka. And Emeka knew it. "Why are you still here?" Emeka asked after a while. Chinedu didn't look up. "I'm your brother. Where else should I be?" "I said I'm fine." "And I said I'm staying." Emeka sighed. "You don't trust me, do you?" Chinedu finally looked at him. "I don't trust what I don't understand." There was a pause. Then Emeka looked away. That alone spoke volumes. Later that afternoon, something else caught Chinedu's attention. Emeka's phone. It buzzed. Once. Twice. 3 times. And each time, Emeka's reaction was immediate. He grabbed it quickly, his expression lighting up again. Smiling. Typing. Pausing. Smiling again. Chinedu watched silently. Then he spoke. "Who are you texting?" Emeka didn't look up. "No one." "No one." Chinedu repeated. "You're smiling at no one." "It's just a friend." "What friend?" Emeka finally looked at him, slightly annoyed. "Since when did you become my investigator?" "Since you started acting strange." "I'm not acting strange." "You collapsed yesterday." "And I'm fine today." "That's exactly my point." Emeka shook his head. "You're impossible." Chinedu leaned back in his chair. "Maybe," he said. "Or maybe I'm the only one paying attention." Emeka didn't respond. But his silence said enough. As evening approached, the atmosphere in the room shifted again. The door opened. And once again, Nurse Amora walked in. And once again, everything about Emeka changed. This time, even Mama Ngozi noticed. She didn't say anything. But her eyes narrowed slightly as she watched the interaction. The soft tone. The shared glances. The unspoken familiarity. It was subtle. But it was there. And now, it wasn't just Chinedu seeing it anymore. Something was definitely going on. And whatever it was no longer easy to ignore. By the third day, the hospital room no longer felt like a place of recovery. It felt like a place where something was quietly unfolding right in front of them. Chinedu had stopped trying to convince himself otherwise. At first, he thought maybe it was stress. Maybe his mind was exaggerating things because of the shock from Emeka's sudden collapse. But now, after watching carefully, observing every little detail, he was certain of one thing. This wasn't normal. Not even close. That morning started like the others. Mama Ngozi arrived early, carrying a small flask of pap and some bread neatly wrapped in foil. She greeted Emeka warmly, touching his forehead out of habit. "How did you sleep?" she asked. "Very well," Emeka replied, stretching slightly. "Honestly, I feel like I can go home today." Mama Ngozi frowned immediately. "Go home?" "Just like that." "I'm okay, Mama. There's nothing wrong with me." Chinedu, who had been standing near the door, let out a quiet scoff. "Of course," he muttered. Emeka shot him a look. "What is that supposed to mean?" Chinedu didn't answer immediately. Instead, he walked into the room fully and leaned against the wall, arms folded. "It means you've been saying the same thing since you got here," he said. "But everything about this situation still doesn't make sense." "I've already explained." "No, you haven't," Chinedu cut in calmly. "You've avoided explaining." Mama Ngozi sighed, placing the food on the small table. "Please, both of you." But this time, even she didn't sound fully convinced. She had been watching too. Not as directly as Chinedu, but enough to feel that something wasn't sitting right. "Emeka," she said more gently, sitting beside him. "Tell me the truth, before that day, did you feel anything at all? Headache? Weakness? Anything?" Emeka hesitated. Just for a second. But it was enough. I don't really remember," he said. Chinedu laughed under his breath. "You don't remember," he repeated. "You collapsed, and you don't remember how you felt before it happened." "I said I don't really remember," Emeka replied, slightly defensive now. "Convenient." "Chinedu!" Mama Ngozi snapped softly. He raised his hands. "Okay. I'll stop." But he didn't look like someone who was letting anything go. The room grew quiet again. Until a soft knock. All three of them turned. And like clockwork, Nurse Amora walked in. "Good morning," she said, her voice calm as always. But this time, Mama Ngozi didn't respond immediately. She was watching closely. "Good morning," she finally replied. Chinedu said nothing. Emeka, on the other hand. "Morning," he said, and the shift was instant. That same subtle change. That same light in his eyes. That same energy that didn't match someone recovering from a sudden medical emergency. Nurse Amora stepped closer to the bed, checking his chart. "How are you feeling today?" she asked. "Better than yesterday," Emeka replied. "That's good," she said, nodding slightly. But then something happened. Small. Almost invisible. As she adjusted the fall line, her fingers brushed lightly against Emeka's hand. And neither of them reacted like it was accidental. It lingered. Just for a second longer than necessary. Then she pulled away. Chinedu straightened slightly. Mama Ngozi's eyes narrowed. They both saw it. This time, there was no doubt. "Your vitals are stable," Nurse Amora continued, her tone still professional. "If everything remains like this, the doctor might consider discharge soon." "That's what I've been saying," Emeka said quickly. She smiled faintly. "Let's not rush it." But the way she said it sounded less like medical advice. And more like something else. Chinedu stepped forward. "Excuse me," he said, his tone controlled. "Can I ask you something?" Nurse Amora turned to him. "Of course. How long have you been assigned to his case?" She didn't hesitate. "Since he was admitted." "Only him?" Chinedu asked. There was a brief pause. Then she nodded. "I attend to multiple patients, but I've been primarily monitoring him." Chinedu held her gaze for a moment. "Interesting," he said quietly. Emeka shifted uncomfortably. "Chinedu, what are you doing?" "I'm asking questions," he replied. "Why?" "Because no one else is." Mama Ngozi finally spoke. "That's enough," she said softly, but firmly. Chinedu exhaled slowly and stepped back. "Fine," he said. Nurse Amora gave a polite nod and continued her routine. But the atmosphere had changed. There was tension now. Unspoken, but heavy. After she finished, she turned to leave. But just before she reached the door, she glanced back. At Emeka. And he looked right back at her. That look. It wasn't casual. It wasn't random. It was familiar. Intentional. And full of something that had nothing to do with medicine. The door closed. Silence followed. Then Mama Ngozi spoke. Slowly. Carefully. "Emeka." He looked at her. "Yes, Mama." She studied his face. Then she asked the question that had been sitting quietly in her mind. "Do you know that nurse?" The room froze. Completely. Emeka blinked. "What do you mean?" "I mean exactly what I asked," she replied. "Do you know her from before?" Emeka hesitated. And that hesitation said everything. Chinedu pushed himself off the wall. "Answer her," he said. Emeka looked between both of them. Then he forced a small laugh. "Mama, you're starting too." "That is not an answer," she said. "I met her here," Emeka replied quickly. "At the hospital." "Only here?" Chinedu pressed. "Yes." "Are you sure?" "Yes." Chinedu held his gaze. Long. Unblinking. Then he nodded slowly. "Okay," he said again. But this time, there was no calm in his voice. Only certainty. He didn't believe him. Not even a little. The rest of the day passed, but nothing felt normal anymore. Every movement, every glance, every silence. It all meant something now. And Mama Ngozi could feel it too. That evening, as she sat quietly beside Emeka, she spoke again. "Something is not right," she said softly. Emeka sighed. "Mama." "No," she continued. "A mother knows. I may not understand it yet, but I can feel it." Emeka didn't respond. Because deep down, he knew she wasn't wrong. Across the room, Chinedu stood by the window again. Watching. Thinking. Connecting everything. The collapse. The quick recovery. The phone. The smiles. The nurse. It was all linked. It had to be. And now, he wasn't just suspicious. He was sure. They weren't being told the truth. And whatever that truth was, it was sitting right there in that hospital room. Hiding in plain sight. Waiting to be exposed. By the fourth day, the air around everything had changed. What started as concern had turned into quiet observation, and now, into something sharper, certainty. Chinedu no longer felt like he was guessing. He was watching something unfold. And this time, he wasn't going to miss it. That evening, he made a decision. "We're going back," he said suddenly. Mama Ngozi looked up from where she sat in the living room. "Back where?" "To the hospital." She frowned slightly. "But we just came back this afternoon. The doctor said he's fine." Chinedu shook his head. "That's not the point." "Then what is the point?" He hesitated. Then said it plainly. "I want to see something." Mama Ngozi studied his face carefully. There was no confusion there. No doubt. Just intention. And somehow, that made her uneasy. "What are you expecting to see?" she asked quietly. Chinedu didn't answer immediately. Instead, he picked up his car keys. "I don't know yet," he admitted. "But whatever it is, I know it's there." There was a long pause. Then Mama Ngozi stood up slowly. "I'm coming with you." The drive was different this time. No panic. No rushing. Just silence. Heavy, thoughtful silence. The kind that sits between people when they both feel something but can't fully explain it yet. When they arrived at the hospital, the compound was quieter than usual. The evening crowd had thinned, and the corridor lights gave off a softer glow. Chinedu walked ahead. Mama Ngozi followed closely behind. Their footsteps echoed faintly as they approached Emeka's ward. "Let's not announce ourselves," Chinedu said quietly. Mama Ngozi nodded. Something about the way he said it made her chest tighten. They slowed down as they got closer. Then, they heard it. Laughter. Soft. Light. Playful. Not the kind of sound you expect from someone recovering in a hospital bed. Chinedu stopped walking. Mama Ngozi froze beside him. They both listened. It came again. Clearer this time. And there was no mistaking it. That was Emeka's voice. Laughing. Not weak. Not strained. Normal. Too normal. Chinedu's jaw tightened. He reached for the door. And without knocking, he pushed it open. The scene inside didn't move at first. It just hung there. Frozen. Emeka was sitting upright on the bed. No sign of discomfort. No sign of illness. His full line had been removed. And standing close beside him, too close, was Nurse Amora. Their laughter had died the moment the door opened. Silence filled the room instantly. Emeka's smile disappeared. Nurse Amora stepped back slightly. And for a few seconds, no one spoke. Mama Ngozie's expression changed first. From confusion to realization, then to something deeper. Something heavier. What, she said slowly, her voice trembling, is going on here? Emeka swallowed. Mama, I can explain. Explain what? She cut in sharply, stepping forward. Explain why you look perfectly fine? Explain why you are laughing like nothing happened. Chinedu didn't move. He just stood by the door, watching everything. Taking it all in. Every detail. Every reaction. Every silence. Nurse Amora straightened slightly, her posture becoming more professional. Ma, good evening, she said calmly. But Mama Ngozi didn't respond to the greeting. Her eyes were fixed on Emeka. Answer me, she demanded. Emeka ran a hand through his hair, clearly caught. It's not what it looks like, he said. Chinedu finally spoke. Then what does it look like? Emeka looked at him. Then looked away. That alone said enough. Mama Ngozi shook her head slowly, disbelief written all over her face. For days, she said. For days of fear. Of prayers. Of thinking my son was seriously ill. Her voice broke slightly. And this is what I find. Mama. No, she snapped. Don't call me that right now. The room felt smaller. Tighter. Like the walls were closing in. Chinedu stepped further inside. His eyes moved to the forestand. Empty. No drip. Nothing connected. He looked back at Emeka. So, this is it, he said quietly. Emeka didn't respond. From the beginning, Chinedu continued, you knew. Emeka exhaled slowly. It wasn't like that. Then say what it was like, Chinedu cut in. There was no anger in his voice. Just pressure. The kind that forces truth out. Emeka looked at Nurse Amora briefly. She didn't say anything. But her presence alone spoke volumes. Finally, Emeka spoke. My collapse wasn't as serious as it seemed. The words landed heavily. Mama Ngozi took a step back. What? I felt weak, he continued. Yes. But it wasn't life-threatening. Then why did you act like it was? She asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Emeka hesitated. Then said it. I didn't stop it. Silence. Chinedu's expression hardened slightly. You didn't stop it, he repeated. I let it happen, Emeka admitted. Mama Ngozi stared at him. Like she was looking at someone she didn't recognize. Why? She asked. The question hung in the air. And for a moment, Emeka didn't answer. Then slowly, he turned his gaze toward Nurse Amora. And that was it. That was the moment everything became clear. Mama Ngozi followed his gaze. Her eyes landed on the nurse. And something shifted in her expression. Understanding. Pain. Disbelief. All this, she said quietly, because of her. Nurse Amora finally spoke. Ma, it's not. Don't, Mama Ngozi said sharply, raising her hand. Just don't. Chinedu stepped closer. So what now? He asked Emeka. What exactly were you planning? Emeka shook his head. It didn't start like this. But it became this, Chinedu replied. There was no denying it. The evidence was right there. In the room. In their faces. In the silence between them. Mama Ngozi closed her eyes briefly. Taking it in. Processing it. Then she opened them again. And this time, her voice was calmer. But stronger. You will tell me everything, she said. Not a request. A command. And this time, Emeka knew there was no escaping it. The silence that followed Mama Ngozi's words was heavier than anything that had come before. It wasn't the silence of confusion anymore. It was the silence of truth waiting to be spoken. Emeka sat still on the bed, his shoulders slightly tense, his eyes no longer avoiding theirs. There was no point now. Whatever had been hidden had already surfaced. Whatever illusion he had tried to maintain had shattered the moment that door opened. Chinedu stood a few steps away, arms folded, watching him with a calm intensity that felt more pressing than anger. Mama Ngozi remained where she was, her expression firm, her disappointment no longer loud, but deeply rooted. "You will tell me everything," she repeated. This time, Emeka nodded slowly. "Okay," he said quietly. He took a breath, then another, like someone preparing to finally drop a weight he had been carrying. "It started the second day I was admitted," he began. "When I regained full consciousness, she was the one assigned to me." His eyes moved briefly to Nurse Amora. She stood still, composed, but there was no denying the tension in her posture now. She was kind, Emeka continued. Not just doing her job, but actually paying attention. Talking to me. Making sure I was comfortable. "That is her job," Chinedu said flatly. "I know," Emeka replied. "But it didn't feel like just a job." Mama Ngozi didn't interrupt. She just listened. "At first, it was normal," Emeka said. "Just conversations. Small things. But it became easier to talk to her than to anyone else." He paused briefly. "I don't even know when it changed," he admitted. "But it did." Nurse Amora finally spoke, her voice steady but soft. "It wasn't planned," she said. Mama Ngozi's eyes shifted to her immediately. "Then what was it?" she asked. Amora held her gaze respectfully. "It just happened." Chinedu let out a quiet, disbelieving breath. "Things don't just happen like this." Amora didn't respond to him directly. Instead, she turned slightly toward Mama Ngozi. "Ma, I understand how this looks," she said. "And I won't insult you by pretending it's nothing. But I want you to know. I didn't come here with any bad intention." Mama Ngozi's face remained unreadable. "And yet," she said slowly, "this is what we found." Amora nodded. "Yes." No excuses. No denial. Just acceptance. That alone shifted something in the room. Emeka spoke again. "I didn't fake everything," he said. "I really felt weak that day. But when I got here, and things weren't as serious." He hesitated. Then said it. "I didn't want to leave." Chinedu's jaw tightened slightly. "So you stayed for her?" Emeka didn't deny it. "Yes." Mama Ngozi looked away for a moment. Her hands came together slowly, her fingers interlocking tightly as if holding herself steady. "Do you know what that means?" she asked without looking at him. Emeka swallowed. "Yes." "No," she said, turning back to him. "You don't." Her voice wasn't loud. But it carried weight. "You made us believe your life was in danger," she continued. "You made me pray like I was about to lose my son. You made your brother panic. You created fear, for what?" Her eyes flickered briefly toward Amora. "For this?" Emeka lowered his gaze. There was no defense for that. None. "I'm sorry," he said quietly. Mama Ngozi didn't respond immediately. The apology hung in the air, but it wasn't enough. "Not yet." Then Amora spoke again. "Ma, if I may." Mama Ngozi looked at her. This time, there was no sharpness in her gaze. Just caution. "Speak," she said. Amora stepped forward slightly. Not too close. Just enough to be heard clearly. "I know I crossed a line," she said. "Professionally, and personally. I accept that. Chinedu raised an eyebrow slightly, but didn't interrupt. But what I feel is not something I can dismiss as a mistake, she continued. I didn't take advantage of him. I didn't manipulate him. And he didn't manipulate me. Her voice remained steady. Calm. Honest. We talked, she said. We connected. And yes, it became something more. Maman Ngozi watched her carefully. Not looking for weakness, but for truth. And what exactly is something more, she asked. Amora didn't hesitate. I care about him, she said. The room went quiet again. Chinedu shifted slightly, studying her face, looking for any sign of hesitation. He didn't find it. This is not how something real starts, he said. Maybe not, Amora replied. But that doesn't mean it isn't real. There was something about the way she said it. It didn't sound defensive. It sounded certain. Maman Ngozi exhaled slowly. Then she looked at Emeka again. And you, she asked. What do you feel? Emeka met her eyes fully this time. No hesitation. No hiding. I care about her too. The honesty in his voice was undeniable. And that made it harder. Not easier. Maman Ngozi sat down slowly on the chair beside the bed. For the first time since entering the room, she looked tired. Not physically. Emotionally. This is not what I expected, she said quietly. No one spoke. Because there was nothing to add to that. After a few moments, she continued. But expectations don't always match reality. Chinedu glanced at her. Surprised. That wasn't the reaction he thought she would have. Maman Ngozi looked at Amora again. You are a nurse, she said. You understand boundaries. Yes, Ma. And yet, you crossed them. Yes. No excuses. Again. That mattered. Maman Ngozi nodded slowly. Then tell me this, she said. If this hospital was not involved, if this situation was different, would you still stand here and say the same thing? Amora didn't even need a second. Yes. That answer settled something. Not completely. But enough. Maman Ngozi turned back to Emeka. You will be discharged, she said. Emeka blinked slightly. Yes, Mama. You will go home, she continued. And you will give this situation time. Space. Clarity. He nodded. And you, she added, looking at Amora, will remain professional while he is here. Yes, Ma. Silence followed. But it was different now. Not tense. Not explosive. Just settled. Chinedu exhaled quietly. He wasn't fully convinced. Not yet. But he could see something had shifted. This wasn't just a scandal anymore. It wasn't just suspicion. It was something more complicated. Something real, whether he liked it or not. Maman Ngozi stood up slowly. We will talk more at home, she said. Then she looked at both of them. Long. Carefully. And for the first time since everything began. There was no anger in her eyes. Just thought. Deep, quiet thought. And maybe. Just maybe. A small space for something unexpected to grow.